Okay.
Like a
I'm totally
a-
cool, calm, and collected. I'm just,
yes,
Yeah, you're not fangirling and
fangirling
nervous
at all.
or at all. Got it. Okay. Good. Hello, heathens. Welcome to Girls Gone Godless, the podcast where we recognize there is a fine line between communion and charcuterie. I am Aaliyah.
I'm Christina.
and I'm Noe.
And I'm Britt. Oh, okay, now go.
Yes. I love that.
On today's show, we're very excited to be joined by Britt Hartley, the founder and author of No Nonsense Spirituality, All the Tools, No Faith Required. She is a guide and coach for people navigating faith transitions and spirituality outside of traditional religious frameworks. Her book was a #1 bestseller in atheism and spirituality and made it to the top 100 books sold on Amazon. She helps us find the beneficial tools within religion without the toxic dogma and how to experience spirituality without the woo. She has a master's in theology and a doctorate, just minus a dissertation in open and relational theology. She has also created a huge social media following by sharing her insight and expertise on all things deconstruction, spirituality, feminism, nihilism recovery, and so much more. We are so excited to pick your brain, Britt. Thank you so much for being here.
What a great intro. I think that was everything.
Good.
And we're done. Okay, you can go. Bye.
Yeah, that was all the things. Yeah, that's
What more
it.
could you need?
Glory, 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 glory.
Okay, so yes, I was raised Mormon and just like a typical Mormon family, eldest daughter, 3 younger brothers. And my childhood was really like nothing really bad happened around Mormonism. It was a really idyllic childhood. And I had a lot of questions, but I just assumed that older people were smarter than me and that like someday I'll grow up and I'll figure it out. So I did have questions, but I just had a lot of faith that like there were answers to these questions. And it didn't start unraveling for me until I was a teenager and I got the For Strength of Youth pamphlet. And when I was a teenager, it was different than how it is now. How it is now is like very loose language, like just kind of recommended guidelines. But when I was a teenager, it was very much like this is God talking to you directly in this pamphlet. And God very much cares about like what kind of hot drinks you're drinking and what words you say when you stub your toe. And I just, as a teenager, like I wish I could have said like I'm experiencing cognitive dissonance and you know what I mean? But it just came out in like teenage angst and just rebellion and punk rock and spike belts and that kind of stuff.
That's
and
awesome.
emo of the day. My emo was a little bit different than like today emo. We didn't have like the black kind of bang thing. It was just more like band tees and spike belts and Dickies pants and Converse shoes. You know, it just had a lot of angst around the cognitive dissonance with this pamphlet about what God wanted to talk to me about because I just found it to be so frivolous. And then ended up having a boyfriend, having sex with my boyfriend, getting kicked out of my home, and having a really big split with my family and Mormonism, which was very traumatic at the time. And but didn't leave Mormonism then. Like was too afraid to just like be out in the world totally on my own. And so I kind of found like nuanced Mormonism and nuanced Christianity at my uncle's house that I was living in. He was a bishop and he had a pretty expansive gospel library. And I found like the deeper aspects of Mormon and like the C.S. Lewis kind of Christian faith that was more, it was more academic, it was more intellectual, and that was enough for me. It like felt like a lifeline that I could reconcile with my family, and ended up going to BYU Idaho. Lots of people had a bad time there. I had a great time there. I found it really lovely. I was in the history and philosophy departments, so that's like a different kind of Mormon. And then slowly, like, you know, kept deconstructing my faith after that.
So I just want to like briefly touch back on your time when you were reading the Strength of Youth pamphlet and you felt like it was God directly speaking to you, or that was the premise.
Mhm.
Did you ever receive a patriarchal blessing when you were?
I did, yes. And I did a test, which looking back is like so me, but I did a test. You'll notice that I'd go by Britt and everybody kind of calls me Britt. I must have been 18 then. I was in college when I got my patriarchal blessing and I said, if this is really God talking to me, he'll say Britt. And if it's Brittany, I'll know that it's not God talking to me. And so the guy goes, dear sister Brittany, blah, 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 blah. And so like I was even then testing, I don't think this is God. It may be inspired, but I don't think this is God talking to me.
You flipped the code name thing on its head. You're like, if you need a
Yes.
code name,
The secret name.
what am I
Right.
thinking?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay,
Yeah.
for the
Yes.
non-Mormon, what is that pamphlet? Like, is it physically a pamphlet, or is
It's
it like?
actually a pamphlet, but it was given to us as this is the prophet speaking for and on behalf of God on what guidance he would have for teenagers of this day. And so I was actually really excited for it. Like, I'm a teenager. The world seems kind of confusing. Having a God like talk directly to me, that sounds great. And so it kind of heralded to us as this thing that like the prophet talked to God, and this is what God has to say to you, a teenager in this day and time. And so it was kind of put on that pedestal. And then when you read it, it's like, don't swear, don't drink coffee, don't get tattoos. And I'm like,
Don't have
this
any
doesn't
fun.
seem. When it's like you're the creator of the universe, and like this is what you have to tell me. Like this is just really
Right.
lackluster to me.
Right.
And then the
Interesting.
patriarchal blessing is a personal message from God that's given to you by a member of the church, a man, of course, that basically he lays his hands on your head and he channels God directly and has this specific personalized message just for you. And I totally forgot about them until I think it was last night, and Noe and I started talking about it. And so I was like, we haven't talked about how weird that one is yet on the podcast.
Yeah, and
so
yeah,
I
I
just
don't
wanted
think
to
I
ask.
had that.
I don't think
Oh,
so
you
either.
didn't.
I don't think I had the pleasure. But isn't it kind of like a Harry Potter sorting house type of thing where they also tell you like,
Yes.
Yeah.
you're
They
in
tell
this
you
group
that-
of Israelites, or
Which
you look
tribe?
kind of Jewish, so you're this one, right? Like they just
Yes.
pick based
Yes.
on what they think you look like.
just like whatever they're feeling, they'll put you in a house of Israel. Most people are in Ephraim or Manasseh because we're in charge of gathering everybody else. And then if you're in the tribe of Levi, it's really weird. This is like getting into like Mormon lore. But if you're in the tribe of Levi, when you get sorted into your house of Israel, which I love that analogy, that's so great. You don't have to be set apart as a bishop because you already have like Levite priesthood. And so you actually get
Oh.
have like special powers.
Interesting.
Weird shit.
Now I kind of wish I had one.
You can still go get one, I guess.
You know what, Noe? Next time you come over, I'll give you one.
There you
Sweet.
go.
Thank
That's
you.
great. Love that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because they love when women do
yeah.
shit like that.
It did come up for me the other day because my husband and I were talking, and we were just asking, like, who do you think like is going to outlive the other? And I had this deep belief that I was going to live a long time. And then I was just kind of investigating that. And then I realized that in my patriarchal blessing, it says you're going to grow old peacefully and gracefully into old age. And so like, I've just kind of had this comfort for a long time that I was going to like, that my aging process was going to be somewhat easy and I was going to be able to make it to old age. And then realizing in that moment that that feeling comes from my patriarchal blessing, I was like, oh no, that might not be true. And that kind of sucked.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
That's so
no.
funny. I had the same thing happen with like a street psychic in San Francisco. She stopped me and she's like, you're going to die very peacefully and you're going to live a long, long time. And so I've always thought that. And now I'm like, wait,
Wait a second.
is this also not true?
No, it's probably still true. I'm going with it still being true.
Yes.
Okay, so you had some nuanced religion in your life when you're living at your uncle's house. You went to BYU, Idaho. You had a good experience. Tell us more about your academic journey with religion and theology.
Yeah, when I went to BYU, Idaho, I wanted to either be a seminary teacher or go into philosophy. So I wanted to go into philosophy or theology, and was kind of pushed out of that because in order to do something with philosophy, you have to be a professor. And they're like, how are you going to do that and have children? And then also at the time, you couldn't teach seminary and have a child at home. They've changed it now. But when I was in school, you couldn't, if you had even one child as a woman, you can't teach seminary. And so like those were just like dead ends to my career. And so they told me, why don't you go into history? And then because with history, you could at least teach middle school, high school history and still have children. And I was like, okay, so I was kind of pushed that way. And that's what I did. So before I had kids, I taught history. And I liked that, but I was more like interested in doing philosophy than I was than I was doing history. And I didn't have a child for 7 or 8 years, which for Mormonism is a long time in the normal world. Like that would be normal. So I had a career as a history teacher and then had my first child. And that was the first time in my life that I could stay home and I wasn't working all the time. And so I started to take things off of my shelf, this concept of shelf, of questions that you have that you don't have time to dig into. And so with my first child, who's now 14, it was the first time in my life that like, I'm going to take polygamy off my shelf and I'm going to look at this thing. And this is before the essays. This is before the Joseph Smith papers. This is before Mormon stories. This is before any of it. But because I have this history in history, I had some experience reading firsthand historical documents. And so I'm actually like at the University of Utah website looking through like pictures of micro, film of documents. I'm trying to make sense. This is before like Lindsay Hansen Park and your polygamy podcast. So I'm just like going through these firsthand documents of polygamy and it just shatters my testimony of Joseph Smith, of the truthfulness of the church, because I couldn't make sense of polygamy and I couldn't worship a God that very obviously to me, even if you believe that like God inspired polygamy, you at least have to admit that God didn't seem to care about women. Like he just didn't seem to care about the cost that would require of Emma, of other women. God's talking to Joseph all the time about all these things. He never once says like, hey, like, let's not coerce teenagers. Let's not, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like just the sheer cost of what it took for women. I just like, even if polygamy was true and God had to ordain it for some mysterious purpose, you at least have to then admit that God didn't care about the consequence that women would have to bear, even up until today. Even women who today, if they have two husbands in their lifetime, they have to choose one. It splits their heart in two. And men don't ever have to go through that. So I just couldn't believe in Mormonism's God anymore. And that's when I just completely lost my faith. So that was 14 years ago now.
Oh, wow. It's always crazy to me that women can stay Mormon. It's really hard. I really try not to support Mormon businesses and stuff like that because I feel like all religions are really shitty to women. But there's something about Mormonism. I'll die never having a crumble cookie because I'm like, I'm not putting any money into that. I just feel like it's the worst for women.
And even then, like even when I knew, for me at least, that it wasn't true or this is too big of a cost for women, when you're in it, it's still really hard to leave. It's hard to leave because you have a place where you have a community, where you have value, and you have a place where you're collectively raising children. That's very hard to come by, even in the secular world. This place
Right.
where I can go and there are other mentors where we're collectively raising children. Secularism has never really been able to produce that. And so
Yeah.
even if you're a woman and don't feel like God really cares about women, even so, it can be hard to leave because that community piece is just so valuable and contributes to so much of your well-being.
Right. And something you talk about a lot, which has kind of softened my heart a little bit because watching your videos before, I was just like, fuck all religion. Like I've had, so fed up with it. But you've gotten me to see like what are the benefits and how can we take those and get rid of the shitty parts that we don't need. And so I would just love to hear more about that because I don't have
Yeah.
the words to explain it. I've been trying to tell people, I'm like, it's like spiritual atheism, but it's not. But like, I'm like, you're the perfect person.
Yeah. And I'm lucky that I wasn't on social media 14 years ago because if I was, then you would have seen, there would at least be clips of me on social media saying fuck all religion, like especially fuck all like Abrahamic religions as a
Right.
woman and like burn this mother to the ground. And I did have a good year or two of that because that's just pure pain of giving my life to something and not having it be what it promised it was. That's a deep betrayal. And so I did go through that. And what I've learned as I went further into studying religion, because I was still very interested in religion and what is and concepts of God outside of Mormonism. I was still very interested in that. What I learned in theology school is that religion is a cognitive technology. There's a reason we co-evolved with it. It's a lot of shortcuts for the brain. If you walk into a Mormon building, even if this religion isn't true, you instantly get meaning, purpose, community, opportunities for awe, transcendence, connection to ancestors, narrative, story, mentorship, access to continual wisdom and inspiration, um, rites of passage for children, collective raising of children. And you literally just walk in the door and that's all handed to you on a platter. Now it's bullshit. Like, it's bullshit. But there's a reason that we developed religion to be able to do that. Because what I think ex Mormons underestimate is how much cognitive work it takes to build all of that outside of religion or to build a family culture outside of religion. Like leaving religion, I have 4 children with my husband. My husband and I don't believe in particularly anything. How do we build a family culture? We had no idea. How do I build all this into my life? It actually takes quite a bit of work, which shows us that religion is a cognitive technology we developed. That if you just believe in X and we all have this shared myth, then we can create this system that does all the work for us. It's an engine for you and it does it all for you. And we kind of underestimate that. I think the dumbest thing that atheists say is like religion is just brainwashing or religion is just bullshit. If that were true, we wouldn't have co-evolved with it. It's a lot of shortcuts that give us a lot of things that we need as humans. And the benefit is you don't have to think about that and have every human recreate the wheel and do that in their own life. All you have to do is just collectively agree on this shared myth and we'll do all of that for you. And that's actually a cognitive technology that solves a lot of human problems. And so the issue that we're in when we look at, deconstruction bigger than Mormonism is as these shared myths are falling apart because we rationally can't sustain them, how do we replace this cognitive technology that has been running for, I don't know, 100,000 years at least? I mean, even Neanderthals have graves that have things that are valuable to the living that they're leaving with the dead, some early signs of religion. So we've been doing this for at least tens of thousands of years, if not hundreds of thousands of years. And this idea that we can just like walk out of a Mormon church and we'll just stumble upon our most thriving life outside of it, that's probably the lie of atheism, if I were to be honest. And so what I want to do is like, I want to walk out of that building. I don't want my children to be raised in it. But how do I make sure that they're not going to pay a cost for that? Because even in statistics, we see benefits to the religion. Longevity, for example, is a big one. People who are in religion live longer than people who are outside of religion. So my goal was always, how do I recreate everything that was good about Mormonism outside of those walls? And it's harder than I think ex-Mormons realize in their very beginning of deconstruction.
Yeah, no, you bring up so many good points, Britt, because a common theme that we find when we talk to people who have left religion is that the big aspect is community. But what I hadn't necessarily put a lot of thought in is that it's more than just the physical people community, but it is that shared mental model of like, we all believe in this thing, we all have connection with this thing, and that's also what causes the community. And that you mentioned the raising of children in a communal type of way. Like, yeah, now that I'm a mom and not having that church network that I grew up having and like grew up with friends from church that was so just like built in, it's not just the community for me, it's the community for family. And yeah, how do you create that outside of having this shared mental model of a similar belief system?
That is the
Right.
question that we haven't answered yet. So we've always answered that question with shared myths. And even when you read a book like Sapiens, as soon as you get a tribe, a group of people over about 150 people we can hold in our nervous system. If we get any bigger than that, the thing that brings these people together is shared myths. And shared myths aren't necessarily all bad either. Like, we have a shared myth that this piece of paper means money, and because you believe in that shared myth too, now we can trade. Like, it's not all bad. We have a shared myth that this land is Mexico and this land is America and there's different laws. That's not necessarily bad either. And so shared myths is how we've learned how to function. And so the problem that we're running into is with secularism is, without shared myths, how can we create community like something like Mormonism? And secularism I've watched, it was actually part of my master's degree to study like all kinds of atheist churches or UU kinds of churches where we're just going to do all the good stuff and leave all the bad stuff behind. Like let's do all the good things, but we won't have beliefs. And they fail. They fail within 5 years usually. And they usually don't ever really have that family, children kind of thing to them either. So the reality that we're finding with human nature is we tend to cult too much or too little. Cult too much and you get the wealth and power of Mormonism. But outside of that, we tend to cult too little, which means that we don't have enough sticky myths to bring us together. And even if we say we're going to get together every Sunday, we're not pouring money into it. We're not pouring our resources into it. We're not afraid of hell. There's no like, oh, 10% or you don't, go to our temples. If you don't have that, people just, we just don't pour the same kind of money and resources into it, which means it can't really compete with religion. So really, you have to cobble together a community. So the 10% that you are paying to Mormonism, we should be setting aside to pay a karate instructor, pay the Girl Scout, try to have some female friendships, try to have some guy friendships with them. And that takes a lot of work. It takes a little bit of money too. It takes some attention. It takes some time. But there's not going to be something like Mormonism that is secular. I actually don't think that it's even possible, which means you're going to have to do the work to cobble together a community. And people who sometimes go into ex-Mormonism don't realize how much work that takes.
Right.
Yeah.
See, I feel bias because I mean, it definitely depends on where you live and, people stuck in the Bible Belt and in rural towns and all that stuff where they have to be closeted atheists or secular or, whatever. I grew up in Orange County, California, where it is very conservative, but there are a lot of atheists and secular people. I joined a Facebook group in 2015 that had 75 people in it, and now it's 550 people. I've met 200 of them in person. I vacation with 20 of them twice a year. Like, we help each other's kids. We did shared babysitting. We did Ronald McDonald House volunteering. We went to soup kitchens. We were always creating this community because, everybody else in the group is leaving a religion or had left a religion recently or, a long time ago.
That's probably
And
why
they
they're
were
so
searching
good
for
at doing what they do.
right for doing
for the
stuff.
model.
And when I hear that other people don't have that because they have to be closeted or there's not a lot of secular people around them, I'm like, what? Like I could throw a rock and hit an atheist in Orange County, but I feel like it's out there with things like Meetup, with social media. It takes a lot of money and a lot of time to get people together on the same page to do something. And it starts to become culty if, it's around something specific like MLMs or, something like that, where there's just a fine line between getting too many people together with the same belief system or non-belief system, where it starts to become its own belief, its own church or whatever. So yeah, it's
Christina, I'm going to disagree with you.
What?
I'm gonna push back a little bit. I'm gonna play devil's avocado here.
Okay.
Because here's what's different. Like, you may have found this one secular group, but I think what organized religion, particularly Mormonism, does so well. At some point in my early 20s, I moved from California to Arizona. I moved by myself. I didn't have any, friends. I went there for a job. Okay. I look online, I find the local Mormon ward. I go, I show up. I know what all of these people believe in. I know what time the church meeting is. I know what's expected of me. I know what I'm getting myself into, and it's automatically there and it's automatically built in. Like, the ability to replicate that is, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. That's a whole other.
Right. But I mean, not coming from any of that, like, I feel like my group of friends was like the closest thing to a church or a church community that I had ever experienced. I mean, I got transplanted to now I'm in Central Valley and it's so different. I found you two and one other friend who's, secular, and there's no way I could recreate the Orange County group anywhere else, really.
And I was even in an opportunity to try. So like I had a group of ex-Mormons here in Boise. We all wanted what we loved out of Mormonism, especially for our kids, without the Mormonism. And
Mhm.
so we actually even tried, even with that group of people that want this for their kids, still we couldn't get it to go. And so this is like what religion can do that secularism can't, is like, yes, you can have community and friends and organizations and get together, but like moral education for kids at appropriate age levels that you could just
Yeah.
like send your kids off to classes and know they're getting moral education. Not even like humanism, it doesn't do that. Like nothing really in secularism does that. And a big one is also rites of passage. We know that evolutionarily, one of the ways that our brains dealt with going from a child to an adult and all the adolescent stuff that goes in between that is that the community would do a rite of passage to show your brain is changing. You were this, now you're this, and you kind of show up in the community now as an adult. And that actually helped the brain to reorient all the confusing stuff about all the brain changes that you make. We've been doing rites of passage for a
Interesting.
long time. And religions do this, bar mitzvah, whatever it is. Religions do this inherently. And in secularism, we don't even know that it's something that we should value. And our teens often really, really struggle because we have no way to say you were this and now this, and all the family's going to come together and recognize that you're this thing in the tribe now, right? And we don't have anything like that. And so this is the problem that we're running into, is that we're realizing how much religion actually did and how hard it is to actually replace those things.
Right.
And that I didn't know when I was just like, you know, fuck, you know, burn it all to the ground because of the cost to women and all of that. I'm not saying, by the way, like go back to religion. I just want people to know that it was doing more for us than we realized, and it takes some attention to replace those things. I don't think that you can have a thriving life with all the benefits that religious people have by just walking out of the building. I just don't see that.
Britt, you're blowing my mind today. Like,
But the thing too is, who was doing all that? It's the women who are doing,
Right.
they're
Yeah.
planning the things, they're cooking the food, they're, all that stuff. So
That's why I'm not worried when like there's this spike of Gen Z men returning back to church because they need a place where they can feel like it's good to be a man, and this kind of return to patriarchy kind of stuff. Like that doesn't bother me at all. Like, okay, in
they
30
can't.
years and there's this spike of all these men that want to go to church. Like, who's running anything? Like, churches run on the invisible labor of women. So there can be
Yeah.
a spike of Gen Z men returning to church. Doesn't bother me at all. That's not sustainable because churches run on the invisible labor of women. If the
Right.
women aren't there, then the church isn't going to exist.
Right.
So
Damn.
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
care.
So, okay, you took polygamy off the shelf
Yes.
and
Going back. Yeah. Threw it at the
circling
wall.
back. Yeah, threw it at the wall. It's off the shelf. Did you have like this formal exit from Mormonism, or how did that happen? Like, do you remember the last time that you went to church, or?
So I did like nuanced Mormonism for a time where like I didn't believe that Mormonism was the one true religion. I believed that it was just one of the many paths to God. That was kind of like where I was at on that day. That would be like 14 years ago. I still even was able to be like a paid seminary teacher after losing my faith in Mormonism. I used just scripture or even Book of Mormon scripture to just try to develop healthy spirituality in general. So I didn't leave even when I didn't believe that the church was true. I honestly didn't think I was really ready, and I was really clinging on to still the idea that God existed and was real. My last day of church, I do remember I was holding my newly adopted daughter, and she's Islander, so she has brown skin. And I know all of the apologetics around race, and the curse isn't really a curse of their skin, it's they lost the priesthood, and I know all of the arguments around our racism in the church. And to my shame, like it was kind of enough for me when I was in Mormonism to like, okay, like there's enough apologetics here, I can like kind of make this work. But when I looked at my brown daughter, that's when it hit me. It's not fucking good enough. It's not good enough. I never want her to read. I never, with all the apologetics that you have, I never want her to ever read that her skin is a curse. I never want her to read about the God-given, prophet-led, systemic racism of the church. It's not good enough for her. Now, I wish I was the kind of person that I would have cared about that more, even when it was just me and I'm a white person. But like to being vulnerable and being honest, it didn't hit me to that level until I was holding my daughter and I walked out of the church and that was my last day at church. You will never hear
Wow.
that. You will never hear that. It's not good enough.
Yeah. I get it. I mean, I get it.
I'm sure you get it. You got it
I
earlier
get it.
than I got it, but yeah.
Yeah. No, you are taught to not question God. And you are taught that God's word and his prophets are perfect. And it was really hard, and I couldn't accept or couldn't reconcile that the way that I was, and this is on multiple levels. This isn't just about my race, but I couldn't accept that the way that I was born was wrong. And that has been a big part of deconstruction for me, not just of Mormonism, but of Christianity and the way that Christianity is in the United States. So, Britt, like, I commend you. And yeah, like, you didn't feel that way or recognize that it wasn't good enough before, but you eventually did. And like, you can admit to that and speak up to that now. And I think that's incredible.
It goes back to what we were talking about with polygamy, that like, even if you believe that God did this, it then reveals that just God doesn't really care about women very much. And same thing with race. Even if there was, some reason for Black people not having to be able to go to the temple till 1978 and you read all the apologetics, even if you make peace with all of that, you have to then at least accept that the Mormon God, in all of his contact with his prophets, never thought to correct them on their racism. Like, we have notes from prophets that talk about their fear, because before 1978, they discussed it a lot. We used to have minutes of these meetings. We don't have minutes of the meetings anymore. They don't keep any track of anything. But,
Imagine that.
50 years ago, they did. And we could read that their fear was that their white daughters would marry and or have sex with Black men. That was their fear. And you have to accept then that God has this, line to prophets, God can talk to prophets. And you have to then believe that the Mormon God didn't care to ever call them out on that. And that's a problem that's not just because people will say, oh, it's just people were racist. It's just the church. No. God is complicit in that too. Because if you say that God can talk to prophets, God didn't care enough to correct the racism and sexism.
God cares enough to tell you to not drink coffee and tea, but he doesn't care enough to condemn racism.
God sends an angel with a flaming sword to make sure that polygamy happens, but doesn't send that same angel like for any other better reason than like you need to marry other young women other than your wife. Like that's when the angel with the flaming sword comes. Like that's what people don't realize. People say like, oh, like the church is imperfect. People are perfect with the gospel. I'm like, my issue isn't with the people. I can handle imperfect people. I really can. My issue is that like this God sends angels, can talk to people, but yeah, it's coffee and it's angels to make sure that Joseph Smith is practicing polygamy. No other time. Like this God doesn't care about anything else.
Right.
So my anger is not at imperfect people. I've had lots of imperfect people. I've had lots of like bad bishops. I could handle all of that. It's the implications of what the Mormon God is. Like that's the root of it.
I still don't get the coffee thing. That's so fucking weird. Is it the coffee? Is it the caffeine? Is it hot drinks? Is it hot liquid? Is it soup? Soup's okay. I don't know. I don't understand.
So I saw a TikTok the other day and it was a guy in his like church clothes and in front of a ward and he said, like, thank God, Joseph Smith didn't make energy drinks, against the word of wisdom. And he's just chugging a monster in front of the church. God. And we're just so silly. Like, it's so silly.
But like in my family, caffeine is a big part of it. And I feel like no one has been able to answer like what, like none of it makes any sense. I don't know.
There's a lot of it that just doesn't make it. There's a lot.
I know.
There's a lot.
We just can't get an answer.
In the word of wisdom, it also says eat meat sparingly. And we just like collectively choose to ignore that one. Like we just all say, that's not really there.
Right.
Like that's not a thing.
That's a metaphor.
Yeah, it's right there next to everything else. And it's like, hey, don't eat meat except sparingly and sometimes in the winter or whatever. And it's funny that it's right there and we just all collectively decided, we don't care about that.
Right?
It's very interesting.
No, there was a joke in the YSA ward that I attended, and basically it was like, "Oh, we eat meat sparingly because we don't put ham in the funeral potatoes."
Okay.
There's some evidence that Joseph Smith was really sensitive to animal suffering. So, like, there was a flood one time and there were snakes that, because it was flooding, and he would take the snakes and take them out and like save them from the flood. And then we also have some quotes about how, like, if you're hunting for sport, like, it's immoral, like, you shouldn't hunt for sport. So, and in his philosophy, even in like King Follett Discourse, which is, it was never canonized, but it's a sermon he gave at the end of his life. This idea of eternal progression, I think for him even included like animals. And so to his credit, he is philosophically interesting in ways that the church doesn't acknowledge today. But I do think there was something there where he really believed that, like, if there's ways that you can eat without animal suffering, we should do that. And the church, we just kind of collectively said, no, thank you. No, thank you.
Right. We'll take the one that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. He's quite visionary and interesting. He's even philosophical, I will say. His version of God solves a lot of the problems of evil, even though I disagree with so many things that Joseph did. And running for president is a pretty big sign of like narcissism and the charisma of these
No.
kind of dictators, right?
Imagine
All of
that.
that there. But we at least have to say, like, if you're growing up with this idea that God is outside of time, God doesn't feel anything, God is outside of matter and space, and we're just lowly worms, and that kind of concept of God, and you're on the frontier, and it's very exciting, and you have this guy. And there's buried treasure and there's angels and God has a body and God talks to us. Like, it's at least exciting. It's at least
Right.
interesting. Like, I'll never say that Joseph isn't interesting. He's interesting. I can see
true.
like why you get sucked into that.
They didn't
He
have
had
to
his hat with the
have to-
rocks and the.
Oh, he's fascinating. And his God is very exciting and very alive. And in the Pearl of Great Price, God weeps. That we have to imagine that is like stunning new theology, that God could weep when he sees the suffering of his children. And that does something in your soul, that God cares. I could see why people get caught up into it. But by the time we get to Brigham, the quote that historians will say is that everything that Joseph did through charisma, Brigham Young did, through power, through, like, he had to threaten women to marry him and they still said no. He had to lock the door and threaten them to marry them and say, God said, and they'd still say no. Like, he had to do everything that he did with power. Joseph could do it with charisma because he was at least interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
No, that tracks. That sounds
Yeah.
about right.
Was Joseph Smith hot? I don't know if I've ever paid attention.
I would say so.
I need to look
I
up
would
a
say
picture.
so.
I feel like in the
Handsome
pictures
guy.
I've seen, he's got like a good blowout going on. Like, it's
Oh,
like,
fantastic hair. Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic hair.
Brigham Young, not so hot.
Not so much.
not at
Yeah,
all.
not
at
so
all.
much.
Mm-mm.
And he would get mad at people when the saints came across and they came into the valley and there were the young women that weren't married yet, and men would kind of pick them up, and he would get mad and say, like, you guys are picking off all the hot young ones. When they get in, they need to be brought to me first. And like, he tried to always get in. So he controlled the irrigation. That's how he was so powerful, because if you weren't on Brigham's side, he could cut off your water, and if he cut off your water, you're dead.
Right.
And so, like, he did everything through power, but Joseph did all of that without that kind of power piece, because his God was interesting, because he was dynamic, and his theology was at least exciting. It wasn't boring. And he's got treasure, and he's got plates, and he's got God crying and God talking and angels. Like, it's at least interesting. And Brigham really just was really, I mean, Brigham just really was an asshole, to be honest.
Big piece of shit. So tell us more about what you do now. You're a non-religious spiritual coach, director. How do you explain that to people?
Yeah, so I did my theology degree. I got a master's, and I got up to my dissertation and never really could decide what to write my dissertation on. And that's when I really had to accept to myself that I had lost faith in God too. And then I have this degree and nothing to do with it. What do you do with a PhD almost in theology and you don't believe in God anymore? So that was a part of my existential crisis, although my existential crisis was bigger than that. And I found the Center of Non-Religious Spirituality. It's a guy named Jim Palmer, who also has had a deconstruction. And it was training people to be spiritual directors. It was an 18-month program. And it's essentially everything that you would see a bishop for if you don't have a bishop. And so it's like dealing with death and existential fears and what is the meaning of all of this, and really just that depth soul work. We've always done that work with like your pastor. And so what non-religious spiritual directors do is they're trained to work in that space and counsel people in that space, even if you don't believe in God at all. Some of my clients believe in God. Some of them are even active Mormons. Some of them are not. And I just essentially provide coaching, technically it'd be spiritual direction, for really how do I increase meaning and purpose in my life in a way that's authentic to me? How do I find a contemplation practice that fits me? How do I experience awe again? What is the meaning of my life? My dad just died. How do I deal with that? What are my beliefs? How do I ground myself with rituals that help me to remind me what I want my life to be about? And usually religion would do all of that for you, or your bishop kind of would help you with that. And so spiritual directors are kind of filling the space of what if you have those questions, but have really no bishop or pastor to talk to. So it's not therapy, it's very specific. So if someone, had issues in their relationship or their sex life or whatever, like I wouldn't touch any of that. I'm not qualified to. But in that soul space, I have enough to like, let's talk about your beliefs and let's talk about building up what you want the meaning of your life to be.
I'm so grateful that Noe shared you with me, because I have always just equated spirituality to religion and didn't know how to reconcile that. And I always felt like I was saying the wrong thing, like of feeling something in my soul or feeling like there was a purpose for me or something. Like my mom told me that when I had children, I had my first one at 19, and my mom was like, when you finally become a mom and you see your baby, like you will understand God and you will find God. And it was almost the opposite. It made me love science so much more. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I did this. Like, we did this. We created this baby. I'm, nurturing, feeding this baby from my breasts. Like, there is no God doing any of
God
this.
didn't rip open his pussy, putting this baby out. It was me.
This is me and my ex-husband. We created this life, and how could I give that credit to anybody else but us?
Especially to a male God. Like, I'm going to give that to a male God.
I talk
right?
about this all the time, not
Yes.
to derail, but it's just this men's fantasy of creating life or something. Like, they're so jealous.
Right. They're so jealous of us. But I always come back to this time last Mother's Day. I was in Yosemite and I had been there 50 times, but we did this hike and I'm standing on Sentinel Dome, just looking out at snow on these mountains over here and a waterfall over here, and a deer is going by. And I just start bawling my eyes out. And my husband's like, are you okay? My kids are like, what is wrong? And I couldn't explain it. I was like, am I having a spiritual like awakening? Like, what is happening here? But I'm like, but I don't want it to be religious. And I felt so like, stop it. This is religious. Somehow this is religious. But it was just like, no, this is science. There were volcanoes and meteors and all this stuff that brought this world together, and Yosemite is here because of science. And it was like so beautiful. But inside me, I was like, no, you can't love this, and you can't be, emotional about it, because people are going to think that you're having a religious moment, and just watching your stuff and understanding that I can still have spirituality without religion it's really, I appreciate you very much.
Yeah, and this is part of like my fight that religion has had a monopoly on those experiences. And so if religion is the only place in town that will value those experiences or put words to it or say that they're valid or valuable, then it wins just because it's the only place in town. It has the monopoly. And so one of the reasons that I still use the word spirituality, even though that's confusing for people to think about spirituality without the supernatural, it's because I just want to be a part of the end of religion's monopoly over things that are human. Awe is a human feeling, and it has incredible impact into our sense of meaning in life. It's incredibly good for us. And so religion having a monopoly on awe does all of us a disservice.
Mhm.
So it's this baby in the bathwater that religion has claimed that these things are God or proof of our religion, and they're just human things. They're just human things that we should all be able to access.
Yeah, that kind of blew my mind when I first heard you talking about it and how you say like you can understand when someone says I feel God here. You can understand the experience without believing in that God because it's a feeling that we're describing and yeah, I blew my mind.
Yeah, it's really it's neat to have there's another word besides neat, but it is neat to feel that it's okay. You make it feel okay to have those feelings.
Those feelings are some of the best. Those peak experiences are some of the best things about being human. And it's even worse in secular areas when you're around a lot of atheists or when you're in a secular country like the UK. If you even talk like you were just talking and you get a little teary in your eyes and you just start talking about this overwhelming awe that you're feeling, it makes people uncomfortable for the same
Mhm.
reason that you were feeling uncomfortable in the sense that like, ooh, this feels weird. This feels like
Right.
it could be religious. This is woo woo. And
Mhm.
I do think that that's a reaction that we're having as we're coming from religion, that we develop this allergy in the secular world to anything that has been under the umbrella of religion. But then it just does us all a disservice because some of those peak experiences are the best things about being human, and we have to talk about them outside of religion, or I just feel like it hurts everyone.
Right,
Yeah.
and they don't deserve to have all of the awe
Yeah.
and the
Right?
fun.
Yeah. Yeah,
No.
you
Like,
Are you
I
want
kidding?
that.
feel the same thing at a metal concert that they do in their, singing
Yeah,
their hymns.
concerts are a big one, and even on mushrooms, some atheists who do mushrooms will stop calling themselves atheists afterwards because they just don't feel like the secular world has any language or space for the experience that they just had. And so
Mm.
2/3 of atheists who do mushrooms and have like a peak experience will not call themselves atheists afterwards. Not really because they don't go back to church, they don't go back to religion. They just feel like the secular world just doesn't appreciate or have language for what they just experienced. And I think we need to fill that out a little bit.
Yeah, we gotta get Christina on mushrooms.
Yeah, yeah, that's a goal. Maybe for my 45th birthday. Um, I feel like mine is cyclical. I have like these existential crises where I'm like, "Oh my god, we're on a planet." And then days where I'm like, "Absolutely there's nothing." And then with my period, I'll be like, maybe there's something, but I don't really care." And then it's like
Right,
ovulation and I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's all so beautiful and there has to be more purpose."
right. You ovulate and you're like, "Everything is beautiful."
Right. Yeah. There must be a God because no, but I don't like putting a label. I tell people I'm an atheist because that's just the easiest way to get them off my back about things like, or I'll say I'm secular or whatever. But it really does teeter between a whole bunch of different things. And there isn't one label for a lot of people.
Yeah, the language in this space is really difficult because it's hard to not use language that has religious baggage. But then, like you said, like atheists just kind of, it's almost an incomplete to the complete spectrum of what you are. Atheist is just what you're not, right? That doesn't go
Mhm.
to what you are. And so for me, it took a long time to try to find a label. Not that you have to have labels, but sometimes it's just a shortcut that makes it easier to work with people. So for me, like I call myself an atheist spiritual director, and at least by calling myself a spiritual atheist, usually I'll get enough curiosity that someone will ask me what I mean by that, and then I can explain. But yeah, the
Mhm.
language in this space is really difficult. It's we and there's a debate in the atheist kind of communities whether we want to reclaim some of the language from religion and just, yeah, you're going to have to take some of the baggage with that, or do we create new language, which has its own problem because then we kind of disconnect from the past. And
Right.
Right.
so the language in this space is just really difficult.
Christians or religious people, they just think you're a Satanist or a devil
Right.
worshiper if you don't believe in God. So I just embrace that. I'm like, I don't believe in him either, buddy, but sure, go ahead.
Right.
Sometimes, like out of spite, I'll try to like out Christian the Christians by being kinder to them than they are to
Mhm.
me. And then sometimes I'll even, just try to speak to them in their language. So, like one of the parables I use really often is the Good Samaritan parable, where the one that Jesus highlights is the Samaritan, but Samaritans were not a part of the house of Israel. He had the wrong religion. He had the wrong, incorrect beliefs. The priest had correct beliefs, the Levite had correct beliefs, but they walks by. And so I'll tell people, this is how I follow Jesus now, is I may have incorrect beliefs, but I'm helping people who have been spiritually wounded and helping them to hold on to some aspect of spirituality, even when they've lost their faith or even when they've been hurt by their religion. And that's how I follow Jesus now. And that usually, like, speaking to them in that language, that like, hey, I'm just trying to follow the Good Samaritan here. The Good Samaritan didn't have correct beliefs either, but it matters to mourn with those that mourn. And there's a lot of people who are hurt and spiritually struggling. Then sometimes by using that common language, I'll get less, you're gonna burn in hell kind of stuff, because
Right.
they can see what I'm doing in their own language.
How do you connect with other atheists who hear the word spiritual and they're like, ugh? Because my husband is very staunch and I've sent him all of your YouTube videos and I'm like, you gotta watch these. And he's like, spiritual, I don't know. I'm like, just give it a fucking chance. How do you, I have the hardest time explaining what you do
Yeah.
to people.
Yeah, the way to deal with secular people and atheists is to go into the science. We usually think of rituals as a religious thing. I don't need that. I don't need to do any like rituals around anything. But rituals, we have scientific evidence, solid science. This isn't woo science. These are secular scientists that show that this is even Carl Sagan, amazing scientist. His daughter does a lot of work of the science of rituals, and she has a book on it even. And she shows you that rituals scientifically increase pleasure, decrease pain, process emotions, and mark values. And we have science that shows that it does that. And that's not just rituals, but like science of states of transcendence, science of awe, and what it does to your brain to have that moment where you're crying and you're part of something bigger than you. Incredibly good for your mental health. Science of longevity, the science of how to combat neuroticism in order to improve your quality of life. And so I don't even talk about God at all to atheists or just say like, oh, you should be spiritual. I'm just saying the science shows there's something here. I just want to access it without having to believe in anything. So I use rituals in my life when I need to process emotion, or even with my children. We're going to hold hands and say something at the beginning of dinner, not because there's a God or not because it does anything magical, but because rituals scientifically mark values. And I want my children to have that like we're a family and that's valuable. We're going to actually mark that before we eat. And so really with atheists, you have to show them the science first, to show that there's something here that's interesting, that's worth exploring, even if there is no God, even if we don't have souls, even if there's no afterlife. I don't believe in any of those things, but I still want all the good stuff because the science says that it's good for me. And in my life, it has been good for me and my children.
I think so many of us are just
Interesting.
so burned from religion that we're just throwing all of it away. And now
Yeah.
it's like, wait, they don't get to keep all of these good things. We all deserve that. Well,
It's like you
Travis, are
said.
you listening?
Yeah.
That's where our children are struggling, is because it's almost too much to expect our generation. I'm like an elder millennial. It's like our generation had to deconstruct religion. That's already a lot. Like that was a lot to do. But then to also in our lifetime recreate family culture and all those good things that we got as children. And so Gen Z, especially the children of people who have deconstructed, who have this allergy to all things religion and spirituality, our children statistically have higher anxiety and depression if they have no access to these kinds of tools. Lisa Miller, who's a lead scientist in the science of spirituality, really talks about that if spirituality were a pill, it would be our strongest pill against suicidality, risky behaviors, addiction. And so for our children's sake, it's worth looking at the science behind these things, because we got that. If you were raised in the church, at least I got that. All those good things where I could develop identity and belonging in a community that was very helpful for me. And if our kids aren't getting that, then that's when we have to start to say, okay, we left Mormonism, but if we don't replace it with something better, are our kids paying a cost for that? And that's a humbling question, because then it's not just about truth. It's about, we have to develop something better in its place. And I don't think that, we've done that, as ex-Mormons. And it's a lot to ask for. Deconstructing is hard. It takes like, I'm a
Right.
decade out and still finding things that I have to deconstruct.
if you don't mind sharing, like, what are some examples of rituals that you have with your family? I know you mentioned that before you guys eat dinner, you hold hands and say something. What are some other things that you do as a family, if you don't mind
Yeah,
sharing?
so before we eat, if we're all together, we'll hold hands and we'll say a quote from Lilo and Stitch, which is Ohana means family. Family means no one gets left behind or forgotten. That's the value that I wanted to mark that we're a family. On Sunday mornings, we do something like family church. I go to the library, and there's usually a section on self and growth or something like that in my library, but basically like moral education books. And so it doesn't cost me any money, but I'll find either like short videos or short books that have some kind of moral lesson. Kindness, thinking of others. What do we do when we sad? What do we do with our feelings? I want them to get that education. So we'll do that. And then if the weather permits, like we'll take a walk out into nature. And then we play games as a family where each kid gets to pick, Ring Around the Rosie or Duck Duck Goose. My kids are still young. And it's a time that their parents are off our phones and that they get to pick something that we do as a family. And so every Sunday, like they know that we don't have screens and I make French toast and we read some kind of moral lesson and talk about it and we take a walk and we play games as a family. This takes us an hour, maybe. It's less than we did at church, but it's something now that my kids expect to happen. At the beginning, sometimes it takes a push, but then once it's part of your family culture, my kids just expect it. One of you said earlier on that, Leah, maybe it was you, that Mormonism gave us a model. And I still kind of use the model of like family home evening nights, Sunday morning church, even though it's just as a family, saying something before we eat. We have our own holidays. We do Harry Potter Christmas is what we do and we get super into it. And I find that really fun. On New Year's Eve, we write goals for the year on Chinese lanterns and we light them and put them into the sky. And just little by little, each year I kind of would add one thing at a time until it becomes a family culture of its own that kind of has its own energy. And then it's kind of more self sustaining because it's not just me kind of pushing it. But at the beginning, it was a lot of my own work. So this next week, what I do for Halloween is I have pictures that I print of people in the family who have gone on. And we talk about them and the effect that they had on the world and others. We talk about death and we kind of normalize it. And then we watch the end of Coco, the Disney movie, where the living people and the dead are they still affect each other and they're still a family and they have this song they do together just to kind of show, just to kind of normalize like, yes, we die and death is a part of life. And these are the people that we still remember and this is how they still affect us. Your life still matters even though we die. And my kids are pretty now normalized to, especially even when we go on walks in nature, that like there's cycles of death and life. And so they seem to have pretty low fear of death. Like my oldest, who's 14, is just more used to the concept of death. So he doesn't have that moment that maybe we all had where like, oh my God, I'm actually gonna die and I actually may die. They've kind of built some resilience to it. So just little by little, I just have kind of put things in place that have become part of our family culture.
I love that.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And
It makes me want to like really sit down and figure out
Right.
these things in my life.
You're like, I need to get a document and start.
Again, this is one of the things that religion does that's a cognitive technology is they have liturgical calendars.
Yeah.
We remember these saints on these days. We do this at this time. And so it can be a good thing to look at your family culture and try to say, like, what are our values? What are things that are authentic to me? Even if it's something silly, you make that into your own kind of family calendar because we know that psychologically, when kids know what to expect, like as Mormons, I know Wednesday night I'm doing this, Sunday I'm doing this. When they kind of know what to expect, it greatly, greatly reduces anxiety. Especially in teens and children. It does for adults too, but even more for children and teens because the brain feels like if I know what to expect and there's this rhythm for life, then I'm safe. Even though we never really say that out loud, that's what the brain interprets. So a liturgical calendar is part of your family culture. Again, something that religion does that we take for granted that can be worth looking at for your own family if you want to get all the benefits of reduced anxiety and depression, which religious children tend to have.
Okay, so you mentioned saints, and I know that you have your own saints, and it inspired me to make my own saints.
Love it.
Just FYI. Do you want to talk about that? Can we talk about our saints?
For sure. For sure. I want to know yours.
Okay. I have my list here. I'm ready. Okay.
Go.
So I have the moon as one of my saints because of like feminine energy. There's this steadiness that comes from the moon and like this subtle power that the moon has. Like she doesn't shine as bright as the sun, but the moon controls the tides. And I think that's really like powerful and magical in some kind of way and special.
Love that.
Elephants are one of my saints because of all that they represent for
Both
like
those are very
motherhood.
feminine. Yeah, both those are very
Yes.
feminine archetypes.
Yes. I got to spend time with elephants in Thailand and it was top 3 best days of my entire life. I have Harriet Tubman as a saint of mine for courage and strength and resilience. And then I also have Christina Yang from Grey's Anatomy as one of my patron saints because she's got so much grit and she's so headstrong and she knows exactly who she is and what she wants in life and doesn't let anything stand in her way. And I really admire that quality. There's a theme here that they're all women except for Luigi Mangione.
Oh, okay.
He is like, in my mind,
Interesting.
he's like the patron saint of justice and courage. And then Anthony Bourdain is also on my sainthood list for like his like hedonism, right? Like he's like, yeah,
Like
drugs
valuing
and
pleasure.
food. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So those are some of my saints.
That's very interesting.
Good
I
choice.
do think you can learn a lot of person by like their pantheon of saints. And you can even like really interact with these saints. I really think that there's power. Stoicism does this. It's one of the best isms that does this without God. Where like if you're in a situation where like I need a little bit more courage, you could kind of imagine what would this person do. And instead of it being like what would Jesus do or whatever, you can kind of like summon that kind of energy. And even if that person isn't real, like you can do this with Gandalf, it really does actually change you as a person. This is what Stoicism does. It forces you to imagine what would the most virtuous hero do in this situation. And then you start to act more like that. And in that interaction, you actually become like that. Religion does this by projecting out the ideal of God and praying to God and thinking about God and what would Jesus do and working with that God, you actually become a better person. That's what that God is supposed to be doing. And it works even if that God isn't real. Because you're working in relationship with that projection. And so I think it's a great idea to be able to list out your values and your saints and even interact with them. What would this person do? Will sometimes do guided meditations and I'll go super deep into it. And I'll have a room with all these kinds of saints and I want to talk to this one and I'll ask them my problem or question and then allow my subconscious to fill the gaps of what would Yoda say back to me or whatever it is.
Right.
It doesn't have to be capital R real for it to be a really helpful way to access your own subconscious wisdom.
I think we should start asking our guests that. Like, who are
Yeah.
your
Right.
the
What, your
yeah.
saints?
3 saints? Yeah.
I think listening or watching some of your videos, I ended up creating like a document for myself. I've called it like my personal code of conduct. Like I think I have felt so like lost. Like religion has scriptures, right? So like Christianity has the Bible and Islam has the Quran and Judaism has a ton of books, but the Torah and, you know, the halacha and all this stuff. And so I was like, okay, what are the things that like I can latch onto? Like I need it written down in like a physical document. And so like I just want to say that's something that you've inspired in my life.
I love that because anyone who talks about nihilism where you don't have any anchors anymore, all of the advice in that space from philosophers is that like if you get to a point where the universe doesn't give you meaning, you have to create it. You have to create this is the code of conduct that I'm going to live by because I decide. And a
Right.
lot of people don't do that work and that's how they get really ungrounded and lost. And it takes intention, but that's when it becomes really beautiful because it's essentially the church of you in a way that's authentic to you and your values. And that's when you start to see really people who do kind of that kind of work are the people that I see like really thriving outside of religion because they took that project seriously, that I'm in charge of creating the meaning and purpose in my life. Like maybe there isn't a God that cares about how I act, but I do. And this is how I'm going to act. Right. And
Right.
that can give us all those anchors back that we maybe were missing in religion. And I thought about the proclamation to the family in Mormonism and how every Mormon has that on the wall. Don't resonate with that at all. And so I didn't really make like a proclamation, but we came up as a family with like 6 rules that like these are important to our family, and I'll refer to them. Like, one of them is like be honest and that you can be yourself in this place and that we don't lie to each other. And it's one of the guiding principles now of our family. And so really, I don't tell atheists this because they're going to reject it outright. Like your husband would just like outright reject it. But like there is something to this idea of like creating your own religion. What are your saints? What is your code of conduct? What is your family proclamation on the wall? What makes you a family? What's your family culture? What's your liturgical calendar? How do you do holidays? And if you just say that to someone newly deconstructed or atheist, they'll be like, don't need that. Like that's just a bunch,
Right.
I don't need that. But when you look at the science, there's benefit to it. There's benefit to it. And you get all the benefits that religious people have without having to believe things that you just can't force yourself to believe. And that to me is like
Right.
the juiciest spot. Like that's the place that I want to hang out. I want all the benefits.
I can still be spiritual and not have to reenact the nativity scene with 50 of my cousins every year.
No, you have to.
I mean, I still want to see that. I'm not going to lie.
Come on over. It's quite a show. We always have a baby young enough to play Jesus.
I think what's important too is that you are the one that's creating this thing, right? Like not only are you adhering to it, but you're the one that has a say of like what that culture looks like. And I really like the idea of liturgical calendar. I think that's the next project that I'm going to work on for myself. Like I've got the saints down and I've got the code of conduct, but the calendar is something that I really am going to work on because my family's very young. Like I have a daughter and she's 16 months. So I have a tiny human, and my husband and I have been married for, I don't know, 3 years or something. I don't know. It doesn't matter. COVID was a weird time.
What is time?
What is time? But like my family is still very new and fresh. And so I think setting up these things now, like we have one tradition for my husband's birthday. We always do a birthday brunch. So like that's like one thing there. And like we always do a fall family photo shoot. But like what are the weekly things that we do together as a family? And I think it's a really good time to figure that out.
And it takes it takes a little bit of work to think about that and kind of set that rhythm in your family. But these, like when I say a liturgical calendar, like Catholicism, like sometimes that can just feel really overwhelming that like, oh my gosh, like when you think of the holidays that Catholics or Jews do, like they've been working on this project for thousands of years, right? Like that can be really overwhelming. I'm like, what I'm talking about with family culture is like you said, like we do brunch for dad's birthday. On Thanksgiving, we always watch this 5-minute video called The Little Matchstick Girl. And it's so sad. I cry every time. Really shows like things to be grateful for. And just showing the pictures of the people who have passed on when we have dinner around Halloween. And we just say that little tiny quote before we eat. These are all things that are less than 5 minutes. Like I have 4 young children. This is not an all day thing. Doesn't cost a lot of money. On one of the days, like I had a nephew who died who had special needs, and that's a day that we'll go volunteer and we'll get things for a local shelter, and it'll be like a day of service. None of them cost me really a lot of money, and they're all just like a couple minutes, but that doing it year after year so that your kids know that this is what we do actually does really help to ground them psychologically and has a lot of benefit. But it doesn't have to be an overwhelming thing. Just little things that are authentic to you.
Yeah. And you've helped me realize like things that I had no idea were spiritual. I'm like, oh, they are. Girl group chat or like our podcast.
Girls group chat is scripture. Like girls group chat is my scripture. Like there is nothing more scripture than like something that one of my friends drops in there on a Tuesday afternoon. And it's like it's like the most powerful thing I've ever read. And I have to like sit down and like girls group chat is absolutely scripture.
I love that. Yes. Just don't look at ours because we'd probably be arrested at some point, but
some quotes in there that are like, that should be on fortune cookies or written on gold tablets or something.
Right. And there are some that just need to never see the light of day.
And there are times like I'll do this all the time with Mormon women when we're talking about like what spiritually fills your cup. And they'll say something like, well, it's not spiritual, but going to lunch with my girlfriends, like it's inspiration, it's connection. I feel so much better. It fills my cup. Well, why can't once a week you saying that this is a priority, just like church was a priority and your husband would cover you when you had a calling, you have to claim that like this fills your cup. Like relationality is absolutely a form of spirituality. We don't see it as that because men create religion and a priest class men create religion, so they don't see relationality as spiritual. But being able to claim that, like, I need this girl's brunch as badly as I need church, and being able to tell your partner, like, this is a spiritual need for me, that was hugely impactful in my own marriage. So for my husband, he does once a year, he goes down to Kona, and he loves Iron Man. He loves like people overcoming things physically. It's very spiritual for him. And he volunteers the whole week, and he helps the families like meet the racer at the finish line, and they're all crying, and it's this big scene. And or sometimes there'll be a disabled person or whatever it is, and he just cries the whole day. It's immensely spiritual for him to be at this finish line. But he never got permission to call that spiritual. And I never got permission that like a girls group, going up to a cabin for a weekend was my kind of pilgrimage. But being able to claim that that was spiritual for both of us, and then being able to cover each other in the way that we used to cover each other for callings, was hugely impactful for both of us.
Yeah. We do a trip twice a year. We rent an Airbnb with like 15 to 20 heathens.
It's pilgrimage. It
really
pilgrimage.
is. It is. And my husband's always like, can't you just skip this one? I'm like, absolutely not. I will move hell and high water to go. I have to go. I feel like the world would end if I don't go because I need it.
That is pilgrimage. It is a sacred place that deeply fills your cup when you go. Right. That is as sacred as it should be when we say, like, the people who have to drive a few hours to go to the temple, and it's a whole big thing, and they save up, and or you go to Mecca, or you go to this cathedral. We have to reclaim pilgrimage, whatever that means for you. For my husband, he goes and volunteers. He's up at 4 a.m. helping people at the finish line. I actually don't go with him because he goes with his people for that. Like, for me, like it's great. It's not 4 a.m. great though for me. So and then and he doesn't go, on the girls' trips, and it's better that way though, and that's okay, and it's still supportive because it's this container where you can both have a spirituality that's supported by the other. That helps our marriage a lot.
And it truly is a pilgrimage because it's like an 8-hour drive.
Yeah, it is a thing, but it fills your cup, like you're saying, and it makes us better moms,
like
better people.
Yeah, the highlight of what life is for, moments like that.
Exactly. And my husband doesn't feel like he needs to have a group of people like that, so he doesn't get it. And I'm like, I need it. And it feels really nice.
Yeah. And it's a need. Relationality is a need for you. My husband isn't as relational either. His spirituality is like 2-hour-long bike rides by himself. And I'm like, that's great for you. Love that journey for you. I will watch the kids while you do that. But for me,
I used to make a miniature pilgrimage every day. I used to live one exit from the Mormon temple in Oakland. And so every day I would be on my way to drop my daughter off at the nanny share, and I would just flip off the temple from the freeway every single day.
I didn't know you were going that way. I thought you were talking about like when you're active, like it inspired you.
No.
We took a turn on that story that I didn't know we were turning.
That's it. That's the whole turn. So I would just I'd get on the 13. I would just finger right to the temple as I'm driving by it, and then I would just put it down every single day, coming and going. And
awesome.
That's the temple where I had my faith crisis. So it's very meaningful to just give it the bird.
I've done that a couple of times because I play pickleball at a Mormon church here because they have a fantastic, like, just girls group of moms that go play pickleball there in the mornings, and they bring the kids and they just play in the nursery. So it's really kid friendly. And just a lovely group of women. And so I'll go there and play pickleball, but I have to like walk past like the pictures of the apostles. And I have like done like sometimes outwardly, but sometimes in just my head, like, I'm not here for you. I'm here for the pickleball. So just this pickleball.
Right.
Do they still have the scratchy walls?
Always. Yeah. Always the scratchy walls.
Okay. Noah, you said you had a question.
Yes. Okay. So totally different topic. It's really interesting to me how you talk about certain kinds of societies create different types of gods. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that one went surprisingly viral on social media. I was surprised that so many people found that interesting. But it's essentially kind of this idea of watching what kinds of societies create what kinds of gods. And the reason that was really impactful for me was because it just started to break down my belief in God, because I started to see the creation of God as a human project. And so that was really the breakdown of my faith in theology school. I essentially began to have this seed of doubt of like, what if we are the ones creating God rather than God creating us? And that's what eventually broke down my faith entirely. So you can just see, for example, flood prone societies that have random flooding, those people create gods that are very temperamental, that you have to keep happy, and you have to do a lot of rituals to keep them happy. And it's because psychologically, you're in a place of chaos where things are really random, and doing rituals that help create order can help to calm down your nervous system. That's why we do that. Gods in the Amazon, for example, where everything is really abundant. These are gods that didn't really require a lot of rituals. You get a lot of animism, just connection to nature, because there's just so much bounty. But when you have the desert and you have irregular flooding, these are gods that are much more demanding, because you're in a much more chaotic environment. So you need to do a lot of rituals to calm down. And so you just see this throughout the Bible. We start off with these Canaanite pantheon of gods, and Yahweh is just one of the gods in this pantheon. He's not even like one of the top gods. But it's a storm god and a war god, and storm and war is very valuable when you are agricultural. So when you're nomads, Yahweh is just one Canaanite pantheon god. And then when they become more agricultural and more settled, Yahweh becomes more important, because you want a war god to fight for premium lands, and you want a storm god because you need rain. And so this god started to be elevated. And for a while, it was just like this was the god of this land, and then other lands had other gods, and we'd fight each other. And sometimes our god would lose, and sometimes our god would win. And then it became over time like this is the god of everyone. And so you just see God change so much, or something like the development of hell, where in the Old Testament we don't have a concept of hell. We just kind of have this afterworld. There's no moral distinctions in the afterlife. But what happens is they become a conquered people. And so how can God bless you in this life if you're a conquered people? Because we lost, like we're conquered. That must mean that you get blessings and cursings in the next life. And then we start to create moral distinctions, right? And so when you start to look at a society and their God, and also how their God changes over time, it's not because of revelation. Something happens always in the society first. Something is happening. And then the people are reacting to it, and then the God changes. There's not a singular religion, Mormonism, Christianity, Judaism. There's not a single religion that stays the same. There's not a single doctrine in Christianity that has stayed the same. Mormonism also. And so when you start to look at it like this, and you see all the religions, and you see the kind of God they created, like I got to the point where like, give me a society, tell me how it works, tell me how agricultural it is, tell me the hierarchy, and I'll tell you what kind of God they created. And I would be right. I got really good at it. And then something would happen, something would change in the society, and then the doctrine of God would change. And it just became so clear to me, like, this is human. This is human. I can explain all of this with no divine intervention. Now, that doesn't mean that I know how life began or the universe began. Maybe there is a God. For me, though, it just meant that this God project, I think, is a human project. And I think we're really bad at this game. And I think we just need to admit that we don't know, because what I see is just humans doing human shit. And I got just really good at seeing it that way, to the point that I lost my faith in God.
Right. Wow. That's fascinating. And it makes so much sense. I spend a lot of time in Hawaii, and with like Pele and all of the, it is, you just see it. It's like they are
Pele's
just
great
always.
though. Yeah. Before patriarchy takes over, I love that the old female goddesses are so multidimensional. Because the women in patriarchal religion, they're really like one dimensional. Like Mary's not there for her wisdom. She's just there because she's a virgin. Like that's all that she has to offer, right? But like Pele, she's like powerful and angry, but then she also has like medicinal waters for healing. And you get that with a lot of the like pre-patriarchy goddesses. They're actually like fully like like they're fleshed out characters. They have sometimes anger or like cyclical nature, but then they have often like the power of language or of wisdom or of healing too. And I just loved learning. Like it was a big part of deconstructing patriarchy for me, was learning about and hearing about goddesses that were like fully fleshed out goddesses rather than the kind of the one-dimensional characters.
Right.
Like
Characters that we get.
women,
Because men ruin everything? No.
Yeah.
women who are more than just a womb in a story.
Right. Yeah. They were like
Yes.
full people with like all these kinds of gifts and powers.
Go
And I
figure.
remember reading, it was like the first time I read, it was like Isis in Egypt. And it was this inscription that was like, she is the greatest above all. And she is the high priestess of heaven. And it listed all of her gifts and powers. And just reading it for the first time, it's not as powerful for me now, but the first time to just have that pronoun she with this really
Mhm.
complex kind of goddess character with this multi-dimensional, aspects to her, it just kind of shocked me because I had internalized patriarchy so much that I'd never seen that, with femininity.
Right. I love
And
that.
that's what men get to experience in religion all the time,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Britt, I think you celebrated your 40th birthday recently.
Did.
And I saw that you did like a really fun thing. Is that going to be a new ritual for you, or was that kind of just marking this particular birthday?
I don't know. I'll keep it open for those listening who don't know what she's talking about. I just turned 40 and I really wanted to do a ritual, and I wanted to do it with women. And I wanted to kind of mark this, even though like even if there's like really nothing magic about turning 40, I just wanted to kind of mark this occasion of, I really feel like the first half of my life was governed by the wisdom of men, and all the books behind me written by men, and history, theology, philosophy are all really heavily male influenced. And that was kind of how my first half of life went. And so much of my life was dictated by what Joseph Smith told me to do, and all these things. And I really wanted the second half of my life to be more governed by the wisdom of women. For me, it's new, right? I experienced the wisdom of men and I read all their books and missed out on a lot of the wisdom of intuition, the wisdom of your body, the wisdom of relationality, the wisdom of the women in my life. And so I just kind of wanted a ritual to help do that. And so I had women in Boise, friends of mine, come, and instead of a birthday present, I wanted them to bring a piece of wisdom that they felt like was hard earned. Like, I wish I would have known this when I was younger, things like that. And it's beautiful. And so every person's was very unique to them in their story, which is beautiful. Just scripture, like we said earlier, scripture. And then we went out and we did reclaiming of the sacrament, which I wouldn't have been able to do my first year out of Mormonism. I would have been too allergic to it, but I can do it now. Each woman kind of blessed the bread for the woman next to her and blessed wine for the woman next to her. And, we kind of had a circle and we danced and we sung, and it was just really, really beautiful. I don't think I could do that every year. It was so heavy. Like, it was just a real peak experience of my life. I don't even know if I could do it right now because it was just so incredibly beautiful. I'm still like recovering from that experience, but just a real testament to, it was like, if you could plan a Relief Society meeting that you would have wanted to be a part of, where we're not reading teachings of the prophet Lorenzo Snow, who had however many wives or whatever, but actually the hard-earned wisdom of women. And we shared it with each other as scripture. And we had a sacrament that we blessed for each other, and we blessed each other's bodies as women, that like, instead of taking the sacrament for Jesus bleeding out, we took the sacrament for the women that bleed out for humanity, that we literally are ripped open on altars and bleed out for humanity. And that's not abstract, that's real. We feel that in our bodies, and we blessed it for each other. And then to sing songs together, and then to dance together under the moonlight. It was the Relief Society that you would have always wanted, that I intentionally created. But I could only do that when I had gotten over my allergy to religion. I couldn't have been there that first year. It would have been a little bit too tender for me to be able to do something like that.
That's amazing.
Sorry, I'm not on Prozac, so I cry still. But
Yeah, I don't cry anymore.
I am. I've got a strong dose of Prozac, so if I'm crying, that something major is happening.
right? No, that's very beautiful.
No, it sounds rite of passage is what that seems like. And I want that for my 40th birthday passage, right?
Yeah, and
right.
we had a teacher, she's like 75, this old woman with a lot of wisdom, and she talked about the archetype of moving from maiden to mother to crone. How maiden is kind of marked by your innocence, mother is a phase where it's very expansive, and then crone is this phase, and it even happens to us biologically, where we're just kind of less sensitive to the needs of those around us, and we start to do more claiming of self. Usually crones in our stories are not married. They're usually old and live kind of at the outskirts of the wilderness, but they always have like healing powers and
Yeah, just
wisdom.
living the dream
It's
life.
just very interesting archetype. And so she talked about that and kind of moved us through that, and just an amazing experience. But there's elements of religion in that. Like there was scripture, there was song, there was sacrament, there was archetype, there was story, but in a way that was so uplifting and empowering and not reductive to, the mother in heaven that we were taught, who is silent and faceless and one of many, right? So it's very cool. Probably, yeah, top 5 highlight of my life. And I had to like push myself to be a little bit selfish and to say like, this is what I want to do. Right. And sometimes it's hard to like claim that kind of energy, like, oh, what does everyone else want to do? And I
Right.
just said, no, I'm turning 40. I'm going to plan this thing. This is what I wanted. This is what I want to do. But it was in a way that I think
awesome.
benefited everyone. But it was still like I intentionally brought it into life. And that was new for me too, because I usually don't like filling that role. But that's the kind of intentionality that you have to sometimes have outside of religion, that if you want something like that, no one's going to give it to you. You have to create it. But when you do, it can be really magical.
And are your friends all secular, or do you have people who are still in the church?
I have some who are still in the church and nuanced, but my best friends are ones who are out. And I do think you can have relationships, even deep, loving relationships with people who are still religious. But for me, there's just always going to be some aspect of my life that you don't understand.
Mhm.
Like if you still have a lot of anchors that God's going to make it okay, you're not going to understand what I'm feeling right now, and there's going to
Right.
be a little bit of a disconnect to where we can go intimacy wise. So my best friends tend to be those who have left, because how could we talk about patriarchy? How could we talk about the void? How could we do mushrooms together if you still have all these anchors that I don't have anymore?
Right.
Right.
That ended up being a little bit of a disconnect. So I would say my best friends are out.
Yeah, I was even thinking about your daughter and like her having brown skin, and like how do you reconcile having friends that have a belief system that doesn't believe that
Yeah.
yeah,
There's going to
you
be
know,
limits to that.
yeah,
There's gonna be
totally.
limits
Yeah.
to like how much I'm going to want to spend time with you, because that's going to be hurtful. What you're supporting directly affects me.
Yeah.
Right. And there was something I wanted to say earlier, and you were talking about how kids raised in religion, scientifically do have less anxiety and stuff like that because of structure. But do you feel like it does benefit children to be secular for not having the fear of like the rapture, the fear of being left behind, the hell stuff and everything? I feel like my kids benefit from not having those things,
Yeah,
So
there's those benefits. So the children raised secular are less driven by fear, and also we see that they are more moral. So children who are raised secular are more likely to be kind because it's the right thing to be kind.
right.
So there are absolutely benefits that we can even see in studies and statistics. So one is that lowered fear and that inner voice that you're not good enough, right? That secular kids just don't tend to have that voice as much. And then also we know statistically that secular kids judge others less. And the judgment that Christian children have doesn't help them to be more pro-social. So they'll be more judgmental and less pro-social. And so that also is statistically true too. So that is absolutely true. Our secular kids are kinder and they're less fear driven, and they're also more likely to be moral, not because God's watching, but because you're a human
Right.
like me. Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We show data that
Yeah.
that is true.
Awesome.
Yeah, let's not discount.
Yeah.
Let's not discount that. You're absolutely right to add that.
So 7 minutes in heaven, it's just 7 silly questions.
I love it. I'm so excited. This is the whimsy. This is the whimsy that we need in the world. I love
Absolutely.
that we're ending with whimsy. Fantastic.
Always.
So number 1 is fuck, marry, kill.
Okay.
God, him or herself,
Mhm.
Jonah, or the whale.
So sorry to do that to you.
Oh, those are the 3. Oh, okay. God, Jonah, and the whale. Okay.
God themselves.
We don't
Yeah.
usually do an animal, but I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
it was just,
I'm
it was
going
too good.
to kill God. I love the idea of killing God. I love
Mhm.
books where there's like an aspect of killing God.
Hell yeah.
I'm gonna marry the whale and I'm gonna fuck Jonah, but I'll tell you why. It's because like even though he ended up doing the obedient thing, he has some rebellion in him.
Mhm.
And I think I could rekindle that in him and that he'd be a good partner.
There you go.
I think I could get him on board. Yeah.
I'm into it.
And then you don't have to fuck a whale. So I mean, that's
Yeah.
really the
So
only
I'll
option
marry
here.
the whale. I love swimming with the whales. Swimming with whales is a very awe-inspiring experience.
There
Absolutely.
you go. That's funny. Number 2 is, what is the most ridiculous thing you believed in terms of scripture or doctrine in your past
God.
religious life?
Oh God. It's so embarrassing, right? Like it's funny to tell my son things that we used to believe because he'll just say like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And I'll be like, listen, you little shit. It took me 20 years to realize that that was silly. And it's so ridiculous to him. It's sometimes in Mormonism, you had like a red flag that like, oh, this feels icky, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then sometimes you're so indoctrinated, you didn't even have the red flag. So the silliest thing, or like the thing that I look back and I'm so shocked that I thought it was totally normal and had no red flag, not at all. Like had no cognitive dissonance with this conversation, is being in the bishop's office when I was first married and he was talking to me about garments. And I was telling him that I don't really like wearing tampons. I use pads, but pads don't really fit garments very well. So sometimes on my period, I wear underwear, and I think that God would say that that's okay. And I'm literally talking to this man about my periods and about what I wear on my periods and about how sometimes the garments, like I'm being flexible with the garments because of my period. And I shit you not, like totally thought it was a normal conversation to have. No red flag. So that
Right.
would be one. The silly belief would be that it's appropriate to tell your bishop anything
Right.
about your body or sex
Your-
life or period,
Or
and
your
that is
period.
totally normal conversation.
Normal.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
consider that completely normal.
Number 3 is, who do you think is the hottest deity? And that could be any character, mythological figure from any religion or culture.
Yeah, there's some big daddy energy with how Michelangelo painted not Jesus, but God. And he's kind of bearded and he has these really, like Michelangelo did these really, really big muscles, right? And
Mhm.
kind of like a pretty big bulge also. And then he's like commanding the planets like this, like he's like forcing the planets to go like this. And he has this stern look. And I got to admit, it's big daddy energy. Big
All
daddy.
right.
Just that specific version of
I
God.
would fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's like a couple of the paintings that Michelangelo did with this Greek body, kind of,
Right.
and like a beard and very powerful. That's
You
like,
might change your fuck, marry, kill answers if it was that.
yeah,
Right.
that specific God. Yeah,
It's big, beefy daddy
very
God.
big,
That's
beefy
funny.
Greek daddy. Very
Yeah,
powerful.
that wasn't the God I was picturing when we made those questions. I was picturing like old bearded
Yeah.
No.
old
We're
man
talking
God.
about
like,
big, beefy
the
daddy Greek God.
Yeah.
like the muscles, and then he's like
Right.
doing this planet stuff. Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
hot. Not gonna lie.
I love
Into
it.
it.
All right, calm down.
'Kay.
Get it together. Whew.
Got a
No,
little
just
hot in
kidding.
here.
All right. Number 4. What's your Jello salad? Which I know you know what that means, but
Yeah.
for non-Mormons, this means, is there any dish from your former church or religious family gatherings that you still make or enjoy?
Yeah, my mom, she's left also. She'll still make herself green jello with carrot shredded in it. It's disgusting. I hated it as a kid.
It's gross.
And I've never made it. But my mom, that would be my mom still actually does make that for herself. For me, it's like it's the homemade rolls with like funeral potatoes. Like I'll still make Sunday funeral potatoes, like cheesy cornflake crust on top,
Yum.
like really still Mormon. but like a good like ham, funeral potato, homemade roll just still
Right.
feels like the best
Yeah.
Sunday dinner to me.
And that's
Yeah.
really all we've
still-
got to offer. We've got that and like sherbet.
Like funeral potatoes are fantastic.
Number 5, if you were to start a cult today, what would the uniform be?
My cult would be only women. I've been really just like
We get that a
female
lot.
centric in my life. And it might just be naked and in like a non-sexual way, but in a freeing way.
Right.
I say this because there was one time as I was at one of those like cabin girls weekends and it was summer and it was dark outside and we wanted to go skinny dipping in the lake. And like none of this was sexual or like really close to each other naked, but there was something so freeing about women being naked around each other with no one apologizing at about their body. No one
Right.
fixing anything, no one adjusting anything, no one kind of like, you know, like how
Right.
we make ourselves smaller, we cover things.
Mhm.
Oh, I haven't shaved today. My stomach looks like this because I've had kids or whatever. And like the power of just nakedness unapologetically and just
Yeah.
being out under the stars skinny dipping. There was just an incredible power in it to do that with other women. That was just incredible. So it would be like naked female cult
Hell
of
yeah.
just the power
That's
of being in your
sounds great.
body unapologetically. No one said anything about the wrinkles or the stretch marks or the weight and it was so rare to be with women where we just didn't talk about that at all. And even our stance of just like I'm not covering. This is just my body, and this is your body. Your body's great, and this is your body. And we just went skinny dipping, and it was so magical. So I would do that.
I love it.
That sounds, yeah. If I wasn't a never nude, I would probably join, but I wouldn't.
If that's how you authentically show up, that you take off your shorts and there's even smaller jean shorts underneath, and that's how you authentically show up. You know what? That's okay too. I'm gonna allow it. I'll allow it.
All right. What is your favorite curse word?
But it's definitely Jesus fucking Christ. Yeah, I really love that one.
Me too.
Yeah.
And it's probably because I watch a lot of British TV, but in my head, like really the swear word, and sometimes I don't say fucking in the middle, but if I were to stub my toe or whatever, like Jesus Christ, it feels more like a swear word than like what the hell or something like that. Like for me, for our religious upbringing, like saying Jesus Christ as a swear word, that one feels really good. I like that.
Using the Lord's name in vain, which that's not really what that is, but it,
yeah. I love a good like Jesus Christ. Like that just feels really good.
It does. It does.
It really does.
I agree.
And number 7 is what is your guilty pleasure?
I love trash television. And I want to claim that there's such a like in the academic space and the spiritual space, like there's all this highbrow that like trash television is like bad for you and it's very, low class or whatever. I find trash television fascinating psychologically. I find it so interesting. I love 90 Day Fiance and like 600 pounds. I love 90 Day Fiance. Oh my God.
This is what I tell people
Sister
all the time.
Wives. I love like Seeking Sister Wife.
Yes.
But like just absolute train wreck TLC shows. I just love. And I don't even think that they're that stupid. Like I think it's really interesting sometimes to even like watch human behavior that way and watch how like a Muslim man and an American woman never works out on 90 Day Fiance. Like that's so interesting to me. I think that all the highbrow academic spiritual people who say like don't watch television. Oh, I don't watch television. Fuck off. Like trash TV.
Thank you.
Trash TV is one of the best things about being human. Putting the kids to bed and getting a little something and getting on your phone and turning on your favorite train wreck people show is literally one of the best things. I will never give it up. You can pry it out of my cold, dead hands. I love trash television so much.
Just when I didn't think I could love you more.
Sociology. It's everything.
It's absolutely sociology. It's absolutely sociology and psychology.
Study of humanity.
Probably my favorite is like, I love the righteous anger that I get watching Cody Brown on Sister Wives, just because he's my favorite person to hate because he's such an idiot. He's such a
ramen
douchebag.
head. Oh my God.
That ramen head. And it's so entertaining. Like I look forward to it. I actually, for my girlfriends, the Christmas gift that I gave them last year is he's on Cameo. And I asked him like what he regrets. You know, he had this really long ADHD story. He really needs to medicate his ADHD.
And his hairline.
Yeah. About the Christmas story and about how his mistake was that he got bitter and because everybody had wronged him. And instead, you know, he has this victim mentality, and instead he should have just accepted it more like Jesus when everyone wronged him. And it was like the perfect gift because it was so stupid that he's playing the victim card. And I got to send it to them on Christmas Day. And it was like the best Christmas present to them. And anyway, it was fantastic.
Britt, thank you. You
Yeah.
are
so much.
fantastic.
This is so great. I could do this all day.
I love it.
Do you want to give our listeners your socials and where they can find
Yeah,
you?
so it's just no nonsense spirituality everywhere. I'm not taking new clients right now. I'm actually training a cohort of future spiritual directors right now. But it's no nonsense spirituality on Instagram and TikTok. I do have a YouTube channel, and I also have a book, No Nonsense Spirituality. So it's just that everywhere.
Awesome.
This was fantastic.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you. Thank you
Again,
so much.
This was my dream.
pleasure.
And if you ever want to come back and talk shit about religion, we would love to have you anytime.
Love to have you.
Will do. I have a book hopefully coming out. I already wrote it. I'm hoping it'll get picked up by a publisher. If leaving religion pushes you into an existential crisis, I wrote a whole book just on that. So I'd love to come back on and talk about that
Please.
aspect of things later on. But
Yeah,
lovely to
definitely.
meet you all. This is a
So nice to
fantastic
meet you.
place to hang out and so
Thank
fun.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye,
Take care.
guys.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Glory to the Lamb. Hallelujah. I am saved. I'm so glad I am. Glory, glory.
Thanks for listening to Girls Gone Godless. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode. It helps heathens like you find bitches like us. Check the link in the show notes to stay up to date on the latest heathen news and how you can become a guest on the show, or leave us a tip if you're feeling generous. See you next Sunday. Stay blasphemous.